Welcome to The Impossible Journey, where we dig into the minds of African entrepreneurs who are building sustainable businesses on the African continent. In today's episode, we spoke to Yomi Jemibewon. Yomi is one of the co-founders of CardinalStone Partners Limited, a Lagos-based West Africa-focused asset management firm. Yomi co-heads the firm's private equity division. In The Impossible Journey, Yomi takes us through how he and his partners built a company that started off with only 2 employees and grew to over 2,000 employees all over West Africa. Yomi is also the author of a wonderful book called Risk and Returns, which shares his personal experiences in building a brand in Africa. Yomi, thank you very much for being with us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Raji.
And how do you feel? How do you feel about everything that you've done up until this particular point in time?
I feel good, feel blessed, feel fortunate, and thankful.
All right, so talk us through Cardinal Stone Partners. Reading your book, we've seen an interesting story about how it came to formation, but we would love to hear directly from you with regards to the business, how it's grown over the last 10 years or more, the different things that you've done, different types of business you've gone into, that you've invested in. Please share with us your experience.
Okay, Cardinal Stone Partners. In terms of the beginnings, it's 4 founding partners. I'm one of them, and 3 other gentlemen, young gentlemen. I hope we're still young today. Came together with a bold vision. 4 of us in 2008 came together, and we invited some shareholders to join us. We started by looking to raise $24 million, ended up raising only $4 million. And started at a time when things were really bad, kind of similar to now.
Right.
Went through humble beginnings, and 4 of us started. We hired 2 new staff to join us. And what has happened since then is today we have a financial services business that employs about 180 professionals. And manages a little bit over $250 million. We have a number of portfolio companies that are in the real sector, from the oil and gas, marine logistics business, to agro business, to health and fitness space, that collectively employ another 500 people, and where we've deployed about a little bit over $30 million of capital. I think the key thing about Cardinal Stone is we still see ourselves as young, entrepreneurial, trying to build something, trying to impact Nigeria and West Africa in our own little way. So we've grown till date, but we still have a long way to go. So that's Cardinal Stone in a nutshell. But if you want, as you ask more questions, we can dig into it a little bit more.
All right, thank you. So let's take a step back, because you've talked about the genesis of Cardinal Stone, but let's go a little bit back to the genesis of you when you look at your educational background and also your previous work experience prior to returning to Nigeria, and how those experiences in your life shaped the formation of your entrepreneurial journey and where you find yourself now. So if you can, talk us through your experience, going to university in America, and then also your subsequent experience with Motorola, going from an engineer to management consulting. So go ahead and share those experiences.
Yeah, so first of all, everything started from my family. I was born into a military family. My dad was in the army. He was a brigadier when I was born.
Really, you were a cadet?
Yeah, exactly. It was the governor of Oyo State when I was born, and I was I am the last of 5 kids. So that is very important, because it shaped just a lot about my mentality. First of all, coming up from a military background, esprit de corps, a lot of sense of purpose, discipline, and, should I say, duty to the country. I grew up around that. Both my parents were disciplinarians, and although I was the last of 5 kids, there was this sense of just family and one unit. It's also carved a lot of how I look at the world, being the last, always having to live up to the expectation of my parents, but also had to respect my siblings. So just that has always driven a lot of how I looked at the world. As a military brat, we lived around Nigeria quite a bit. Lagos, Ibadan, Kaduna. In terms of secondary school, I went to a private school. When I finished, went to America for college. Virginia Tech for my undergrad and also my master's in electrical engineering. Then I worked at Motorola as a research engineer for a couple of years. I think my experience there, not long after I joined, the company had to lay off about a third of its global staff. So experiencing how no matter how well you do individually, there are a lot of things beyond your control in the real world that affects you. And so I think that was what spurred me to say, look, I wanted to do more than just being an engineer, doing really good work at the back end, but having my future determined by those in the front office. Compelled me to go to business school. I went to Wharton for my MBA, and then from there I joined Bain and Company, doing management consulting for international firms in America. I lived in America for 14 years, but at that point, got to a point where I felt something was missing in my life. I felt I needed to find myself, and thinking through that, realized that maybe coming back home would have helped me discover myself. So that compelled me to come back to Nigeria. I came in as an investment banker, but I was looking for more. I wanted to kind of get involved in building businesses. So wanted to come back and just figure out how to get back involved in Nigeria. But I had been away for so long, joined an investment banking firm when I came back, but I was working on my business plan. Reconnected back with one of my business school classmates, because he and two other guys
had come back.
No.
Okay.
He actually was still in America.
Wow.
But because my wife at the time was still in America, and I used to go back every 6 weeks.
Right.
And so we had a dinner, and he said, look, what was I doing? I told him I was in Nigeria, but I was working on my business plan to do my own thing. He called me like a couple of months later and said, hey, Yomi, I and two other guys that I know from Nigeria, we want to start an investment banking firm. And I thought about you as the fourth guy to join us, given what you said you want to do. And so I said, okay, let me meet the other guy, or one of the other guys, because he was in the US, another guy who was in the UK, and there was one guy in Nigeria, and I was in Nigeria. So I said, let me meet the guy in Nigeria. And I had a meeting with him, everything connected. We all got on a conference call, because they had been having conference calls before that. And that was it. Every day we were on conference calls. And a couple of months later, we all quit our jobs. Femi left America. Michael left London, came back to Nigeria, and we started CardinalStone. So that's the journey.
So that's the journey that got there. And you know, it's always interesting when people engage with CardinalStone, depending on the class of business they're in, whether you're investing or however you choose to engage, and they see how successful you guys have been, the level of continuity you've had over the last 10 odd years, and you know, the progress you guys are going to continue to have. But I think it's important to also talk about the challenges that you have experienced personally in this journey that you've gone through. Looking back to two turning points in Nigeria, 2009 and 2016, and I'm sure those are years that are etched, you know, somewhere in your memory, when we had those economic downturns and we saw contractions in the way that we do things. So how did that impact, number one, the business as a whole, but also the journey that you were going through as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, 2009 was huge, but in our mind, it was 2009 and 2010. Like, people think about the starting point, but it was the journey throughout. And we started our journey in 2008, and everything looked to be good until like the fourth quarter. And mind you, when the fourth quarter hit, everybody, we're so prayerful in Nigeria. Everybody was expecting things were going to turn around very quickly. We didn't know we had about 18 months of just hell in front of us. Now imagine, four of us we felt like we were the ordained. Everything we had done till then, we had been successful. In fact, when we raised the capital, people committed very quickly. People were like, man, these guys are going to do great things. All of a sudden, you come and things are changing around you. So first, it took some time for us individually to admit that this thing is really bad. But the other thing is, there's something about groupthink. Even when you think things are bad and nobody else is speaking, maybe you're like, okay, am I the person? Maybe I shouldn't say anything.
We're all thinking the same thing.
We're all thinking it. So it took some time for all of us to voice it out and to say, guys, things are really bad. And we might need to change. So we had to scrap our business plan. Everything that we thought we knew changed. All the assumptions, the market, the global markets. And we came in thinking we were entrepreneurs. We learned to be entrepreneurs in 2009, 2010. Because all of a sudden, we had to scrap the business plan. All our assumptions were off. There was the way we thought we were going to make money, they didn't exist anymore. So we had to humble ourselves. We had to recognize that we could be extinct. So we became entrepreneurs. So although we had a business plan for investment banking,
we became real entrepreneurs.
we became real estate agents. We were selling space. We had renovated our office space. We had to lease it out. We had to start, maintaining the place and earning money. We had to start doing consulting for free so we could build our brand. We had to beg for a chance to just show people we could do the work. So what did we learn from that has actually lived on today? Humility. People throw that word around, but humility is really believing that you are fallible no matter how big you are, no matter how great you think you are. Things can turn around. So that's number one. Number two, we learned to live and build a great dream based on prudent foundations. And what do I mean by that? We still had big dreams. We had invited capital providers, but there was nothing happening. We had to at some point stop paying our own salaries. We had to cut salaries significantly. We had to do big things on a low budget. Now it's interesting how that has played till today, because you talked about the next downturn, and there's a downturn we're going through now.
Right.
What we've also always done is always said, look, as we're looking forward, no matter how good the times are, because we were born during bad times, we don't get too lavish, too ostentatious. We, even our compensation structure with our staff, right? We're competitive in terms of our base pay, but we always, at the end of the year, in a good year, we pay good bonuses. And everybody, we're transparent about it. Right. But what we do is we don't overpay and then regret it at the back end. We've never laid off till date. We've never, because we always live on, no matter how good the times are, we know that.
So you're always planning for
we know that the bad time could be around the corner. And so we've learned to, because we were born during a bad time, we've learned to invest during the bad times as well. Like, we had no choice. We had already started. So we were stuck in it.
So it's part of your DNA as an organization.
It's now part of our DNA as an organization. So we think big, but we act prudently. And so that, it sounds good today, but it wasn't that nice then.
There were times, it kept you up at night.
Yeah, there were times when it was 3 months, you didn't know if you were going to survive. Right. But let me talk about the personal side, because at the same time, we're all in young marriages. We had partners that we had to depend on. You have to have a bold face in the office, despite the fact that you know that 3 months down the line, you might not be here anymore. You have to be bold to your staff. You have to go home to your wife that's expecting a new baby. My wife had moved to Nigeria for me. So there was just also learning to have a strong face, but also having to be honest. Because I had to have open conversations with my wife that, look, things aren't going too well here, but don't worry, we're working on it. I need your help here. And I had to lean on her, and all my partners had to do the same thing. So there's also personal growth. And I think I'll end this part by talking about another personal growth through that journey. There are times when you don't realize. I remember I used to, my little kid would come on the weekends to play with me, and I'm reading newspapers, and my wife just had a conversation with me one time. Like, she said something, and I read a book that said, you better be careful. Right now, she wants to spend time with you. There will be, in a couple of years, you might be the one wanting to spend time with her. And so recognizing that even as you're fighting that battle out there, there's a home that you're also building. There's also an entrepreneurship thing going on here with your partner. So there was all that going on at the same time. So
let me ask this, and let me pivot to the environment that we are in. I think it's very important that people understand the terrain that we're in. We see what's happening, and we appreciate how difficult things are just setting up a business, the regulatory environment, having to deal with state agencies, having to deal with tax and other, things that you have to, you depend on. What is that like, and how do you navigate that, especially as you invest in businesses and then there's so many regulatory loopholes and red tape that you have to go through?
I get questions like that a lot, even when I travel abroad, and they're like, oh, it's such a mess and stuff. Recognize that anywhere you are in the world, there's all this mess. It's just that it's a little bit more unstructured here because we don't know it. I have to be straightforward with that. One of the things that has helped me, and that I always tell people, is I have had strong collaborators. Starts from my partners. Femi had done investment banking before he moved to America. Michael and Mohammed, in different ways, had been part of several financial services startups. So Mohammed was the pioneer MD of Zenith Securities. Okay. So just the regulatory framework there, the challenges, being part of Zenith Bank as it was evolving, he had seen a lot. Michael, both of them were in Stanbic IBTC when he was
Strong foundation.
and if you look at the brands and even the way those people thought, you know, Stanbic IBTC, before the IBT acquisition, they were there, before the Stanbic acquisition, they were there when the restructuring took place. Michael left Stanbic IBTC. He was with Betiva when they set up, when they started. So just getting their licenses, getting their approvals, dealing with regulators. Then, I think when the Access guys started, he actually was there when the Access Bank thing happened. So the reason why I start from this is, if I had come, a guy from America, wanting to set up a new business here, there was so much I didn't know, so much experience I didn't have, so many relationships I didn't understand, that I would have had to be learning from scratch. By having partnered with people who had operated in many senses, straightforward organizations. So they had that experience, they had relationships, they had been through the battle. On day one in starting, we had maybe 60% of the answer, right? Because we had people who had exposure to dealing with this in the right way. Then when we started, we now called the Fola Adiola to join our board, who also said, guys, there's a way you must build this business. Discipline, you know, straightforwardness. That was more challenge, but we already had 60%. I have to tell you, if I tried to do it on my own, maybe I would have had 30% or 20%. But by having that, then there's some things, and this is what I'll tell every entrepreneur, there's some things that you must find out on your own. No matter how much there's out there in terms of book writing, there are some things that you must experience and go through. Not just because people don't write it and talk about it, the new ones keep popping up. New regulators are popping up, new issues are popping up. And then when they come at you, you need to decide, how am I going to deal with this? There might be, and you will do your research, how are other people dealing with it? But then you come back home and say, how will we do, what will our own way be?
And it comes down to your ethics.
What will our own way be? And you have to make that decision. You know, people think many things come in black and white. No, many things don't come in.
It's all gray.
A lot of grays, a lot of shades of gray.
Right.
So I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. This is so interesting, and it pivots towards this next aspect of the question, which is about COVID. There's something I saw yesterday that there's a question that everybody in the world failed, which is in 2015. If you ask somebody, where do you see yourself in 5 years, and everybody got the answer completely wrong, because nobody anywhere planned for COVID, right? So the question is, going back to your point about how you hedge your bets and you prepare given the DNA of the organization, but what impact, truthfully, as an entrepreneur who has been in the game as long as you've been in the game, what impact has COVID and the pandemic had on your business?
Okay, so I'll take this from different angles, because it's, when you talk about CardinalStone as an organization, we have many businesses.
Right.
So I'll start from the top line to say some businesses have not been affected much. Some have been thoroughly affected. Some, funny enough, have
benefited.
Let me not use the word benefited. Have not been. Good things are happening, but for other reasons, and I'll talk about each one specifically. Okay. Let me talk about the mothership, CardinalStone Partners, the financial services business, which is so I co-head the private equity arm now.
Right.
That's not the mothership. So the mothership is financial services business. What do we do there? We have a stock trading business. We manage assets for people in and out. Let me step back and say last year was surprisingly a good year for that organization, and call it the fear of how we started. Anytime we have a good year, we always say, what's coming next? So when this year started, we were already saying, what's this year gonna be?
Based on experience, right?
Yeah, we're like, you know what, we had a good year, let's put some reserves aside.
Because a consecutive bull market is always worrying.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So nobody now expected this COVID stuff. Now I'll tell you something. Right before we had our first board meeting of the year, we actually went back to, because COVID had started happening in China across the world.
Like November, December.
Yeah, and it had started affecting us January, February. So we wanted to we had done a budget, and they wanted to kind of present another budget to the board. But the board was like, look, we don't know how this thing is going to affect us yet. So we thought the COVID thing was going to be bad. I'll tell you that net for the mothership, it's actually not been that bad for a number of reasons. I mean, since COVID, we've been working from home. We shut down the offices very early, just thinking about our people. What has happened is there have been ups and downs. I think the financial services market is trading, right? Stock markets have gone down, up. But I think some good bets have been made there where we continue to trade. People in the market continue to trade. They use our services. But because we're working from home and we're not traveling as much, a lot of our OPEX has gone down as an institution. But there's still a lot of trading activity. So net, it's actually not been that bad for the mothership.
Right. In terms of cash that you keep at the end of the day.
Yes.
The OPEX aspect that you mentioned.
Exactly, right?
Okay.
So let's put that in one corner. That said, in the private equity arm, we're invested in real sector businesses. I'll give you an example. There's a major agro business in Lokoja that actually was supposed to do well because people are demanding food, but there have been a number of problems. Supply chain has been hit. They can process, but their farmers can't get to the farm and get stuff to them. There's competitive pricing.
Interstate travel.
So all that was hit dramatically. We had to restructure loans, right? There's an oil and gas business, oil prices, that's been hit. However, funny enough, because it's long-term contracts and there's been a negotiation with the oil and gas, that's not been bad. Now, one of the businesses that's actually performed quite surprisingly positively is we have a business called Stoneworks that generates granite gravel in Ondo State for construction. Funny enough, that business is doing quite well. And you wonder why? Guess why?
Why?
It's because T-bill rates have dropped. And there are a lot of people that would have had their money in the bank earning a lot of money, but because it's earning like 2%, 3%, they're saying, let me do that real estate project now. So they're actually buying granite.
Yeah.
But one of the worst hit business of ours that we've invested in, we actually invested in a gym chain, has 8 locations. You can imagine 4 months going.
That's 4 months
zero income. So, in response to you, and if you look at there are certain sectors like healthcare that, maybe it looks like it might be positive, but there are challenges, right? If you don't have your equipment on ground, you're still importing them. So net, I'll say we're being cautious. Even those businesses that are not doing too badly, we're being very cautious. But we've been hit in different ways across the board. So
obviously these are things that have happened.
Yes.
To CardinalStone, and it's a very reactive thing, like you're saying. You see a lot of businesses just across many sectors that are experiencing what you're experiencing, where some tanked completely, and then there are other businesses where they repurpose, they reimagine their business, and they're blossoming and booming. I was having a conversation with some people in the fashion industry who were very concerned initially, but very early they locked into, okay, well, we can use this equipment to make PPEs and repurpose our machines to now get into the protective gears and everything else. And that's all they've been doing for the past 4 months. So with COVID, with the pandemic and the different impacts across the different businesses you've mentioned, what's next going into the rest of 2020 and beyond?
Okay, that's a good question. And I think it's different for different businesses.
Okay.
There's some businesses that, and I'll use example, right, again, because I'm sure you don't want me to be high level.
Yeah.
There's some businesses that fundamentally this has questioned their viability under the old system. You know, in Nigeria, because we're hopeful and prayerful, people keep on praying that it will turn around. But we're 4 months in now.
Right.
So I know there's a life after COVID, and people need to remember that. The question is, what is that life after COVID? And
it's not going to be the same life before COVID.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And when is the life after COVID? You know, what people are not realizing is this COVID appearance is now 4 months in. Are we going to live with COVID tension for 12 months? 18 months before post-COVID?
Well, I mean, to your point, the 1918 pandemic, I remember going back and looking at some old interviews, people said things didn't start going back to normal for like 2, 3, 4 years.
There you go.
Yeah.
So now the reason why I say that, it's interesting. So let me take a step at a time. When all this happened, we shut down our offices. We found a way to work from home. Now we've done this thing where on Wednesdays, if you need to, you can come into the office. So we keep on every 2 weeks, the COVID committee, and I head that, we meet like remotely, and we're like, what's happening? And I keep on hearing people when we resume, I'm like, guys, we are working. What do you mean when we resume?
Right.
Like we are, so there's this thing where, we keep on, at that time we're saying every month we'll look at. So I'm actually saying, guys, can we have a plan for the rest of the year? So that people even stop wondering about, now we're saying, okay, people need to start taking their vacation. This is what it is.
People haven't.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
This is what it is. So let's put that in one corner. So a business like CardinalStone that's finding a way to run, you kind of need to just own it. This is it for some time. What is the new normal? For some time. Now, there's like the gym business that, to be honest, we've taken longer than we should have. It's almost like the CardinalStone story. Like, there's a prayer, okay, we'll turn in 2 months. When are we going to go back? But finally, 2 weeks ago, at a board meeting, we said, you've been saying, what if we open in August, September? So we've said, assume you will not open these locations till March next year. What are you going to do? The good thing is there's some capital. How do we rethink what we're offering people? And that thought has started. We had a brainstorm session last weekend. Literally, this business is going to repurpose itself.
Has to.
The gym is going to open back up, but is it going to be in 24 months or 18 months? What steps do we need to take to make sure, regardless of when that opens, there's a new normal? And I'm talking with excitement now because finally the entrepreneur, and that's the difference between when we start our own businesses versus when we back entrepreneurs. Because we knew this entrepreneur had to get there, but we couldn't force him there. We had to nudge him like, guy, you need to start thinking. Like, no, it's opening next month. Finally, he's seen that he's 4 months in. It's not happening. So now a committee has been set up. We had a strategy session last week, and we're excited because within the next 60 days, we're going to release some stuff to the market that's going to be exciting. But he's had to literally rethink what he's offering.
Had to.
So the reason why I use those two examples, CardinalStone, which is we're running, but it's more of what's the new normal.
Right.
To keep our people safe, to continue to add service, let's get comfortable in that. Versus, dude, this business model cannot
Rip it up and redesign.
Right. Two different things that are happening within our organization.
So let me ask you this. You've written a wonderful book, fantastic book. I've read it.
Thank you.
So for any young individual, your 25 to 30-year-old demographic person living abroad or here in Nigeria, whatever the case may be, they've read your book or they watched this interview, what single honest advice do you have for them? Something that is genuine and authentic that comes from Yomi, the entrepreneur. Not necessarily Yomi, the partner, CardinalStone, et cetera, but from Yomi, the individual that they can relate to.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to put two things together. For any entrepreneur, be bold but humble. And I be bold yet humble. And the reason why I put those together is, and I'm just going to add to the question you asked to say, my advice is not just for the entrepreneur. It's for the guy that, or the lady that is not content or happy with where they are or their situation. Be bold in thinking about what it could be if you took steps and believe that you can make it happen. But in taking those steps, take them with humility. Now, what does that mean in practical terms? Because again, humility doesn't mean you're saying, you meet people and you're saying, oh, yeah, no. Recognize that no matter how bold you are, and I meet entrepreneurs who, we all need to act as if we're infallible. But a lot of it is just, we need to put it out there. When people are asking us, how do you know you can deliver?
You've got to demonstrate
You've got to demonstrate confidence.
Right.
And I recognize that. That's fine. But in your steps, in your plans, in your collaborations, think that you could be fallible. Your assumptions could be wrong. You need more help than you think. There's one advice I always give people, and it fits into this humility. I always say, no matter how much money you've made, how much experience you have, how much exposure you have, you need more collaborators than your own internal competencies to succeed, more so in Africa. I mean, think about it. You can have all the money in the world. I could have had all the money in the world, saved up. If I had come in here, started without my partners, for example, there would have been more regulators that would have hit me up, more challengers, but I had collaborators that were able to say, no, don't do that, don't start that. Thinking about it, I can have all the experience in the world. If I did not have the local context from my partners, I would have just gone in the wrong directions. That humility was inbuilt into my partnership. Because I was humble enough to recognize that there are a lot that I don't know. there's a lot of, that's why we went to Fola to say, you've done something bigger. That humility brought us another collaborator there. It also, and I'm gonna make one last point, because when I talk particularly with repatriates, particularly those of us that train in America, for two reasons, just the America training teaches you to be bold and brash as needed. But because of America and the distance, we are farther away from home. The Brits, they get...
And you come home quite often, there's a psychological...
Exactly.
Yeah,
So because of that, the American trained are more removed. And they come back and someone is late for a meeting and you're like, how dare this person keep me waiting?
They don't understand, yeah.
So, calm down. Calm down. Be humble. Keep it all in. Can go home and let off steam when you're home. But it's a new environment. The same way if you go to China, you need to learn, what's going on. Be humble. Now, it doesn't mean you should take crap. It doesn't mean you should not respect your own boundaries. But you know what? You can do that without flaring up, without whatever. Keep it, the Zen. Keep it. Be humble. Take your notes. Be bold but humble. And I finish it by saying, you can say you're going to conquer. You can plan to conquer. But you don't, plan it and execute. Recognize that you might be wrong with some assumptions and be ready to adapt, but you don't need to say it all out. So I don't know. That's the big thing. The boldness is important, because this place, if you're not bold, you can get scared back into your bucket very quickly. But humility helps you adapt quicker, recognize that you could be wrong, and make things work for yourself.
Yomi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the Impossible Journey and sharing your very unique and your very authentic entrepreneurial experience. And I think it would definitely help a lot of individuals with shaping their reality and understanding the different things they need to do for themselves as they go along with their journey. Okay? Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, on the Impossible Journey. We've had Yomi as well, and he has written a wonderful book called Risk and Return. I encourage everybody to read it, and next time we'll see you on the Impossible Journey.